All right. Okay. Hi, everyone. Hope you can hear me well enough. Let's double check the quality here. I'll just open the stream in my other window just to make sure I see the chat. Okay, how's the quality now? Does the sound work well? No, it just seems like there is a delay on the on YouTube video when I speak. Yeah, that's what I meant. right, let's see how it goes now. Hopefully there are no kinks to work through. Okay, hi everyone. Hope you can see me clearly and hear me. Just making sure quality is fine. Hope it feels like we are experiencing some delay, but hopefully it will be better now. So I wanted to start the chat, my themes with my take on Mature Nephilim. And the reason I thought it would be a good idea that large miniature that can be well, can be discouraging actually to tackle it because there is a lot of skin on that miniature, and it's always a challenge to tackle large surfaces. And I thought it would be a good idea to get started with something from my favorite faction. So before we get started with this one, I wanted to show you the previous one, which I worked on in preparation for the stream. You will see it in a second. Yeah. Sorry, guys, we're still working through some delay issues here. Okay, my favorite Neverborn Master. That's a tough question. I would say currently it's a radar, mostly because of the aesthetics. I really like the voodoo magic aesthetics, the swamp things. It's just really speaks to me. That's what I like about it. It's has a quite unique design, and in terms of design and gameplay, it's really fun. Well, not for everyone though. Sometimes the rider can be quite oppressive in the game, but well, all masters can be. Here's also a young Nephilim that I painted alongside the big one. And I'm aware there is a big delay between what I say and what is showing in the screen, but hopefully we can work around that. Let's just see how it goes. Really, did you start with Neverborn? That's nice to know. All right, so here is the base coated one that I prepared. that I made from milliput with some skulls added, just elevating it a little bit. Since they aren't as large as they used to be in the second edition, I thought I would give it some extra height. Now, my goal for the stream is to show a fairly simple method to achieving rather good quality of painting without that much effort, hopefully. So what I do is, first of all, the miniature is base coated with spray, and it's GW Wraith Bone. And what I do then is I try to pick up some of the details using pure white and a gentle highlight and gentle dry brush just to pick up the most protruding elements. It will help out a lot in the long run. May seem a bit unusual to approach it, to dry brush white on almost white miniature, but that's what we're gonna do. Just gently making sure we just pick up the most protruding elements. Not sure it's that clearly visible in the screen, on the screen that you're watching, but it's visible here. The membranes on the wings have some nice details, and the white settles in immediately, just as the furry back, muscles, nails, knuckles. Just think of applying gentle dry brush over the elements that you want to really pop when we start applying glazes. And I used to that the Raid as a biomaster, that's why I love her. Yeah, that could be something. You're onto something. I mean, bio is pretty cool. When I started, I was originally considering Summer box because I loved the Gremlin miniatures in the first box with metals. They were so cool. Still like them. Right, howdy. Howdy, how are you doing? Doing great. Haven't seen you in a while. Okay, so now that we have the base coat and basic highlights, very basic highlights, we're going to start applying washes. Now, I will prepare a mixture of light blue, so it's called Aromatic Blue. It's from contrast range. And I want to make this blue dirty, murky blue. So I will apply a few drops of snakebite leather alongside with it. So now I will show you some of the methods that I use for mixing. Here is a simple 30mm base, which will be just enough to prepare the mix. Well, Emerit, I do hope you come to Saturday. Been expecting you for a while. Been big part of the community since the beginning, so it's a shame that you haven't been showing up so much. It would be good to see you. Right, so here's the preparation for the mix. I'm going to apply, as you can see, I'm using a very old, badly worn out brush. It's really not the quality matter, it's how much it absorbs, and I want it to absorb quite a lot. And I'm being quite generous with it here. And over that, I will put come to Warsaw, come to the tourney there. Why not? Then I will apply some snakebite leather into the mix, which will darken it considerably. Still putting more blue. And the thing about contrast is that they can easily make your miniature look very shiny. So in order to tone it down, I will do a very simple thing of putting a few drops of a medium there. So I'm going to put Lamia medium there. Ha, biggest part. Nothing like an inside joke. It's all because Emeritus has a big heart. And that's why he's a big part of the community. Big heart, big part. Here's my palette. As you can see, I don't use wet palette. Rather very old city. Who uses these nowadays anyway? And I will just start putting it on the miniature. As you can see, it's created a even slightly greenish look, which we can revamp a little bit with a touch of Thalasar blue. So I'm going to add it to the mixture to keep it a bit more bluish. There we go, mixing it on the palette now. And here is the dark murky blue, which will serve as the foundation for what we want to achieve. As you can see, it flows in quite well into the recesses, and we'll be toning it down a lot in the course of the stream. We don't want it bright, we don't want the white to be so visible. We are aiming for roughly something that we have on this one. So there will be purples going in, there will be some bone white used for highlights. Still plenty of work to get the skin to where we want it to be. So you can see I am quite generous with the wash. Before it dries, I still have a chance to remove the paint where it pulls too much. I don't want it sitting in large quantity in the recesses, because those pools look really bad when they dry, so you don't want them there. You want to make sure you spread it evenly using just quick, confident brush strokes. Now into the legs, the big guy. Right. There we go. So you can see I'm not too concerned if I go over other details like fur, hooves, loincloth. Doesn't really matter at this point. Plenty of time to fix that still, because I want it to look a bit more organic. So blending some of the colors in, it's just one of the tricks I learned, especially when you paint unusual skin tones of creatures which have hair. You want to use the skin color on the fur part to blend it well and get a more coherent look, just to play with the unique character of the model that you're working on. Small thing that goes a long way if you apply it consistently. Yeah, the miniature holder, it's quite useful. I mean, typically what I use for miniature holders are just old paint bottles with blue tack, and I stick the miniatures on that. But this one is quite good because the big miniatures, when they have some extra weight on them, and this one has some extra weight, the milliput adds considerably to that. It makes it a bit easier to maneuver it around. I'm just sure it doesn't fall off. So, and it's not that expensive. It's a pretty neat thing to do, to be using with your large miniatures. Okay, just cleaning up some hair from the brush that decided to stay on the model. Now I'm going to switch to a smaller size brush. Again, I'm using an old, badly damaged brush because we don't need good brush for this part. So it looks super shiny, glossy now, which is not ideal. That's something to work with. Now we're going to start on the wings, as you can see, using smooth movements of brush. And I'm not concerned if it goes slightly on the membranes, because again, plenty of time to get it straightened out later on. Hey there, hi Croatia. What's that? Cannot really see it on the sprite winkle. What is that? I mean, I've been to Croatia a few times. I mean, 2 times on the Malifaux tournament. Great people, great country, perfect for holidays, and really good Malifaux community there. Hope it gets reactivated at some point in the future, which won't be easy given the limitations we have, but we'll get there. If you ever run a tournament there, I'm definitely up for it. Be great to reconnect with some people I met there. All right, so keeping up the work on the wings. As you can see, I'm using a slightly different shade here, a bit more greenish. Now to continue with the interior part of the wings. Blue is a challenging color to get right because it's easy to make the highlights look too highly contrastive. It's difficult to get really smooth coverage, but I will be aiming for a more gritty look here. So I'll be going quite heavily with highlights in the next stage. So this part of the wing is almost done, and we will speed up the process in a second because I want to make sure I get as far with the skin as possible during this stream. Let's see how far we manage to get. Holiday in Poland. See, if I make a recommendation about Poland, anyone watching from Poland community, will be either happy that I make it or unhappy. Because there is a lot of more or less friendly banter going on between people living in two major cities that would be considered immediate destination for holidays. One of them would be obviously Warsaw. Box art colors. Let me just finish that thought. Warsaw or Krakow? I would suggest visiting both because they give you a different experience. Warsaw is the capital. Plenty of things to see there: museums, restaurants, bars, parks. Krakow is a more historic city. Really amazing atmosphere. I was actually born there in the south of Poland and I studied there, so it's a great place to go sightseeing. It's a city that really never sleeps, so maybe a bit tricky if you want to settle in. But for holidays, I would say go visit both. And box art theme, more or less, this is what I'm aiming for. So slightly cartoonish look, I would say, with contrasts clearly visible on the highlights. So that's what I'm going for. Now it looks pale, still way to go till we get the look that I'm aiming for. So I thought also I would use a different method because I've been watching weird streams. Really good stuff happening there. Really enjoyable content. Seems that most people paint from black, gradually use brighter colors. I want to do something different. I want to do something that might be easier. Maybe it's not easier, it's maybe just different. So as you can see now, I'm trying to put more saturation here. Just now, when you see that the paint starts pooling, just wipe it on the tissue, grab a brush full from the pool and spread it evenly. Now, one of the hobby tricks, I know it's been already shown in the streams, very useful thing to have, something that I never use. Both my wife and my girls use it a lot, which is a good old-fashioned hair dryer. So using the hair dryer now. You want to be careful not to keep it too close because it can damage the model. And as you can see, I missed some spots and there are some pools of paint which I want to remove now while we still can. Going a bit heavier on the recesses. Just want to create some contrast there. And back to the hair dryer. The new big Nephilim. Yeah, it kind of looks like the old one. I have the old one somewhere. It's pretty cool miniature. Yeah, I'm working on that. See, I need to switch between, because I know there is a noticeable delay when I speak, so I need to switch between the screens. But thanks for pointing that out. I'll be more careful. Show the miniature. Now it should be better. All right, so it's more or less dry. A bit of paint pool here, which we're going to refill, which is good because we are still working on the darker parts now. Face is still too bright, so we need to darken it. We'll then bring up the details again, and after that, we'll put more saturation, put more blue to that. I guess we are almost ready to move to the next stage. Okay. So it's beginning to get some saturation of blue that I'm feeling good about. Now let's add some more. Let's speed up the drying process. Oh, my voice is dead. Let's see. Is the voice still out? Putting more on white. Just trying to define the most protruding elements again. And we'll have some fun with blues in a second. And then we'll switch to a smaller brush and do it the old-fashioned way. But we're already getting some nice level of contrast, which I like. Okay. I think at this point, we can already start adding the blues, because I want this mature blue one. So we'll be ramping up the blue in that. The new Marcus Cooper, also great. Yeah, I agree. Favorite is Hunter, can you a birdie? Yeah, that's a big birdie. Big bird. My favorite at this point would probably, the one I'm most looking forward to putting on the table would be the new Zoraida, because I really, really like what she can bring to the table. Seems like a different take, which still would make you feel like you're playing a Swamp Hag, but in a different way. She should be unpleasant for those facing her, but in a different way. That both can't say if this is going to be more or less oppressive, but different. The stun potential there is amazing. You can stun people, keep them stunned, keep them less efficient. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use just a standard blue ink. Once again, put it in my fancy container. And again, since it's really glossy and not really what we are looking for, I will add a few drops of Lamia medium. We'll bring up the miniature in a second. Here it is. And again, mix it with a big old brush, one that can absorb more paint. And the reason why I'm painting it on white piece of paper is also to check the coverage, check how vibrant the color is or how much I can do with it. So I'm going to try it on the wing. All right, there we go. It's getting saturated, getting blue, this kind of gritty, murky blue that we'll be pushing more in the next stage. And as you can see, it goes well with what we've done so far. It's still not what we want, but it's getting closer. I'm going to add a little bit of the ink just to keep the color slightly stronger. Yeah, that's what I meant. So as you can see on the back, we're starting to get from this point to that point. I would say we are more or less halfway through, still plenty of time ahead. But you want an even coverage. Don't go over the board with applying it. I'm going to use the hair dryer in a second to speed it up again. But just don't rush things. You don't want it all over the miniature. Rather focusing more or less on the skin area. As you can see, I'm not too concerned about painting over the membranes, the parts of the wings which won't be bluish in the long run. Just applying it slowly and gradually over the whole thing. All right, almost ready for another use of hair dryer. Just adding a bit more blue here. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush just to make sure I get it on the wings. As you can see, it's a very, I would say, forgiving technique, because even if you, at this stage, if you see that you missed some elements, like a white dot here, you can still go over it. And as I said, I'm aiming for a more gritty, slightly cartoonish look, which means that I can always get back to a place I missed. All right. As you can see, I'm removing the paint where it pools too much, because it would interfere with next layers of paint. So I want to keep the coverage rather even. There we go. Okay, a bit more here. I really like the texture on the tail of this miniature. Looks pretty nice. Signature Viruk blue. Well, not there yet. It will get there. So I will once again speed it up. A little bit of paint pooled here, so I'm going to gently spread it. You see, it's, as I said, it's a really forgiving technique, because if you see there's too much paint in one place and it starts drying, before it's too late, you can fix that by spreading it more evenly around the area. It's starting to look darker. We're getting somewhere. Old guild miss. Oh yeah, I did play guild. I actually started with guild back in the day. Lady Justice was my first master. Really, really liked the first Death Lords and miniatures. And that's what originally got me interested in the game. I just thought, no way, it's not just collectibles. But then turned out that there is a game, there's a card mechanic behind it, which is unique and not different to anything else. And it works. It works quite well. The game is fun. Oh yeah, the Avatar. The big summer run. Is it Gracie? I think it's not Gracie. Okay. Like this big fat summer munching on some meat, sitting on the largest pig in the bayou. That was fun to work with. Okay, so we got to much darker look, which is a huge change compared to what we had initially. Now I'm hesitating whether to start highlights or to put in some more shades. I think I will start highlighting. So now another trick. Take the paints that you used already for the first set of highlights. I'm going to use a less damaged brush now, because I'm going to be a bit more precise. This one looks about right. So as you can see, again, not a perfect brush. And I'll start doing the highlights. So what I want to do now, I'll prepare the mixture, is to use the colors which I used for the saturation and add some white to that. This will create a more coherent, structured look. Let me just add some of the blue, some of this greenish blue, and then it will add white to that. So mixing it together, and again, we want to see how the color looks on a white piece of paper. I will add a bit more blue. Then I will put more lemon medium. Because we want the paint to be really thin. We'll add, okay, that's the dark blue that I want. Now I'm going to add white to that, because we'll be working on highlights. So I'll put some of the white paint here. I mean, not pure white. This time I'm using Mammoth white highlight from B3 paint range, and I'm going to mix it up a little bit. And that's why I have the 30mm base here. Just to make sure I have the color, which will be good for highlights. Not too bright, not too dark, bluish, not white, and very thin. You want the paint really thin for this stage. I'll add a bit of blue here. All right, that's more like it. We are getting somewhere. Now let's start putting that on the miniature itself. And what you want to do when you start highlights, don't start with the face, because it's the first thing that people will notice. Start with the back, just gently lying it over what you have. As you can see, the fact that I used a mix of what I used for the initial saturation, then controlled mix of white, of saturated white, added a little blue to that, just allowed me to keep it under control, keep to the shade which I want, which will go smoothly over what we already have. Now that I checked it on the back, I feel more confident working on the front of the miniature. And as you can see, I'm very smoothly moving the brush over the surface of the model. No need to hurry here. If there are still some spots where the base coat is showing through, you don't need to hurry. You don't need to worry about that. Everything can be fixed. I'm not sure if that's what you would call a proper way of painting a miniature. That's something that I'm not sure if I would say it works well. It's just, for me, it's fun working this way. And as you can see, the fingers, we don't want the face to look like one structured element. We want to break it down. So we'll be applying more highlights here. We'll be putting in a bit of brown or purple. We'll see how it goes. This is like mixing paints on the miniature. That's why it's important to keep the consistency of paint really, really thin. Thin your paint, thin your paint. Yeah, thin down. Always water down your paints. I mean, water is good, but it evaporates rather quickly. Like, you can always use a medium that lets the paint dry slower. Lime and medium is pretty good because it doesn't affect the coverage. So the paint still covers the miniature pretty well. And as you can see, we're already starting to build up highlights while maintaining this rough, slightly uneven look. And the next stage will be pushing it even further. I like this approach because it gives you control. It gives you a lot of control. And if you make a mistake, it's like happy little accident, as late Bob Ross would say. Don't need to worry about that, because anything that doesn't go well at this stage will get fixed as you keep on highlighting. So I like to think of this process as just making sure that it's dynamic, that you can go back and forth between darker areas, brighter areas, bring up the highlights if you need to, tone them down. And it's really fun process. Most of the time, paint is wet on the miniature, but you can already see the details on the face coming up a little bit. See if it focuses properly. Maybe if I put tissue behind it, you can see it a bit clearer. Now another fist that we don't want to look like one structured element. We want to break it down, but we'll go there shortly. Just building up the volumes on the muscles. And at this point, I allow, thanks to the fact that the paint is really thin, I allow it to go from the most protruding elements to the shades, because it kind of tints the miniature while still maintaining the highlights. Right, there is another leg, and as you can see, I'm moving quite fast. I hope to get most of the skin part done during this stream. We'll see how far I manage to get. Right, time to work on the tail. And as you can see, when I go over the tail, I'm not too concerned if I put this thin down paint over the details, because it still keeps the details darker and the highlights where I want them to be. I will do it in the next stage where I will be adding a bit of white to the blue mixture. I'll be more focused on going over details, on making sure that the areas that are more protruding are brighter. I've used the Nephilim, the Mature Nephilim in game a few times. It's nice to, well, I actually tend to use Blood Shaman. Use the trigger on his melee action to give everyone around him focus. Nothing like focus in area or a mere mask that you need to shit in for the trigger. Give everyone focus, then get the corpse marker, pick it up, next turn, rinse and repeat, and get the major up. It's a super nice miniature to use in game because it's very fast. It's a heavy hitter. You can use him as beater, you can use him as a scheme runner. He can get anywhere with his move 6. And he can be a nasty surprise, which happened to me as well when I was facing Nekim. I just wasn't aware of how the combat finesse works. The fact that you cannot cheat when you target the model in melee, well, it just makes it hard to pin it down and to get some consistent damage on it. Yeah, enjoy the walk with the dog. Why don't I use classic wet palette? I use it sometimes, just don't need it. don't really need it because I typically paint fast enough to go through different stages without the paint drying too much. As you can see, if I put a lot of lemon medium here, it's still dry enough for me to work. Now I'm going to be a bit more focused, so I'll be taking more white, the mixture. Maybe, well, we'll need to add a bit more to that, but that will come later. We'll get to the stage where I'll start kind of filtering what we have. So already I'm building up the volume on the muscles. Chest is such an important area here, so you want to be really careful here. Place them evenly. To frame them, showing where borders are of each element here. Now those abdominal muscles, they have a lot of details there that I will pick up by gently, literally, I'm just tapping my brain over the area. The second arm. Is anyone else painting tonight? Working on anything else? Now going over the legs. And the paint still has the right consistency for highlights, so I'm feeling quite comfortable here. Now let's focus a bit more on the face. Just make sure when you put a highlight, you don't cover the area that you had previously highlighted completely. You want to keep the darker colors in. I will be painting the interior part of the ears with a slightly pinkish color, but we'll get there in a second. Okay, so second highlight almost down. Just make sure that you work whenever the paint is really thinned down, you need to apply a few layers of it. Otherwise, the highlights won't be really noticeable. And as you can see on the legs, they are really starting to pop up at this stage. So again, I'm using the same consistency, the same color, going over details, more focused highlight. Just making sure that those muscles are clearly visible. Same with hands. All right, Ryan, it's just learn how to do sketch style on the bus. Will I play Nakima? No, not yet. Haven't even got half of her box painted. Don't think I will play her too soon. She doesn't seem too difficult to. I mean, it's a nuanced play. You need to know when to commit her, especially how to maneuver in the first turn. So I'll get there. At some point I plan to paint her and play her, but it's not my priority now. Attaching Huntsman. Those paint after blowing up the mechanized workshop. Oh yeah. Treat him well. Those are cool miniatures. I really like the fat one that has a big old six-pack on his big belly. Super cool miniature. And Ryan, you're working on the Green Dragon for D&D. Cool. Is it roughly? I mean, it must be completely different scale than Malifaux. Dragons are fun to work as long as they have details. Then they are good. So now, since I've gotten the sketching part pretty much done, we'll go quickly over the wings. And as you can see, I'm just quickly touching up on some parts of it. Not worried about being not perfectly precise here. Just quick movements of brush. Not putting the highlight everywhere, just focusing on the areas which are better visible. Again, on the back. This is a really well designed miniature because you can clearly see which areas you want to keep brighter. So it makes it easier. And in a second, I will start working on the shades. So it will be a bit of back and forth, bringing the colors up, bringing the highlights up, and working on the shades. Here I'm focusing on the tail for a change. Just making sure I don't apply too much. You know what? Since I'm experiencing a bit of delay, I will try getting out of the video, getting the chat on the second screen so that I have clear overview of what's happening in the chat. We bit out, but okay, the thing is that I still see the YouTube video, which I have running just to see that my chat. It's with big delay compared to what I see in the other window, which directly shows the feed from my camera to me. But hopefully we'll work it out for the next time better. But at least now I get an overview of two things. So my feed and the chat. So what bust are you painting? Would be cool if we'd released a bust, some of the most recognizable masters, like good old Nicodem, Justice, Morning, Lilith, well, you name it. That would be fun. Like a collectible. Okay, so we are getting way up with the highlights, and now I will be pushing darker shades a little bit. So first of all, I'll start with Cardboard Crimson. It's a purplish shade, but it's slightly brownish as well. So it will add an element of warmth and contrast to the miniature. I will switch to a different brush for this one. Maybe a smaller brush. This one should be better. So this time I'm using a smaller brush, but still with fairly thick bristle, just to absorb some of the wash. And the wash itself, again, it's too shiny, so I'm adding a bit of Lamia medium. Okay, this is more or less where I want it to be. And I'll be going over the elements which I want to keep darker, just gently tinting them at this stage. Not going over the whole surface. Here's the head. Okay. You can even use your fingers to wipe the excess paint from the protruding elements. Neat trick, but saves you a lot of time. Alright, so the purple is settling in. We'll be bringing that again with a still brighter highlight. But for now, I just want to get the shades locked in. Moving the excess of paint and gently working it over the surface, so to make sure that while it stays tinted, the shades stay more clearly defined. Don't want to get the same color that you have in the shaded areas on the whole surface. Right. Now adding a bit of purple to the face. It's going to make it more, say, organic. Now I'm quite generous when it comes to letting it into the recesses here. Guess we'll be pushing it even further shortly. Here we need to get it darker around the fur area as well. Now here is the part which I want to make sure stays dark. The leg and where it bends, because there is a creates a kind of natural shade for the paint to flow in. So still wiping the excess of the paint. If you want to be very precise here, you can just have a separate brush just with the lime and medium and remove the excess paint from the elements that had already been highlighted. So it's starting to look really mean at this point. Just add a bit more shade next to the hairline. Again, tinting the areas which are not immediately clearly visible and where I want to have a stronger shade. Okay, and the wings. Again, last time around I was just working on midsection. So now I will be using the, let's say, the edges here. Well, this is a bit time consuming, but it really gets the job done because it creates this nice contrast. Use diversified shades, not just dark blue, mid blue, bright blue. I mean, Nephilim are such ferocious miniatures that when I think of them, how much they move around, just thrive on being active, being violent for the most part, being active, just want to really push the contrast on them to make sure that the scalp gets proper treatment. Now a bit more on the tail. Okay, now before the next stage, I'm not going to use the hair dryer because I'm perfectly fine keeping it slightly wet before I apply next dose of shades. I think what comes to my mind when I think of these highlights are, I don't know if you know the game, the video game, the PC game I used to play it when I was a kid, StarCraft. They had those Zerg like aliens, insect-like aliens, and this is kind of the look that I have at this point. Okay, so here we are with a bit of purple. And now we're going to push it further using, I'm hesitating between red and brown, so I'm going to use mid brown. That should be fine for what I want to get. Okay, I will put some on the ears. Now I'm using it. This one has more opacity, so I don't really need to water it down. I won't be thinning it down with lemon medium. Again, I will, or maybe I'll thin it down with lemon medium a bit. Just don't want it to be too shiny. Hey, thank you for liking the stream. Nice, like the running zombie icon. That was fun. So putting a bit more shade here. Once again, gently dabbing it with a loaded brush around the areas which I want to keep darker. Still wiping the excess with my finger. Good news in my inbox after this stream. Okay. Looking forward to that. Won't be looking now, although I'm tempted. I'm not that good at multitasking to be reading emails and painting a bit too much. So if you look now at the chest, there's some paint really making nice shade there, which we'll pick up very shortly. Okay, I'm being quite a bit too generous with the shades here, but just want to make sure I get most of the skin done during this stream. And again, focusing on the darker areas, which I want to be differently shaded. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Now, before it dries, I'm still going to, of course, after the stream, no need to interrupt now. Now I will push the blue a little bit more. So I'm going to use Thalassa blue and add it to the previous mixture, which I still have. So you see, it's good to have those handy because the paint isn't dry there still. And I can just switch between the three of them, just making sure that it stays close to what I had initially. It's different because I want to bring back the blue, really bring it up this time. So back to the smaller brush. And once again, testing if the consistency is fine, if it's the color which I want. As you can see, you can even place it next to the previous layers, and you will clearly see the difference. So we're getting the blue zone now. And I will bring up the details on the arm again. As you can see, the fact that the details in the shades are not completely dry, this means that I can comfortably blend them in on the miniature itself. So it gives me some flexibility. Now I'll tackle the chest. Making sure the brush is not overloaded, just trying to gently blend it in. Note that those are quite different colors, so it might need a couple of goes before you get the color you really want. Once again, defining the edges. Now the abdominal muscles. Still looks a bit messy, but that's when the next round of highlights will come in handy for unifying everything. Because once we have those colors blended on the miniature, next set of highlights will be really bringing everything together. So there is a nice contrast between the chest and the darker shades. And again, don't want to go over the whole surface, just making sure I kind of tint it. Next set of highlights will be with this blue color with a bit more white added to that, and then I'll go with pure white, and then the skin will be almost done. So contrast will be there, and the blue will be there, and the dark in the shades will stay dark. Now I tend to start with the bases, but I'm so generous with blue at this stage that I felt that there's no point really starting with the base if it gets blue all over anyway. And now going over the wings. Now this is using this approach, you can go back and forth, put the highlights where you want them, keeping the look slightly chaotic because I like it to be reflecting the nature of the miniature, just going along with what you would expect. And I wouldn't expect anything structured from a Nephilim, so keeping it mixed up. We'll pause for a second now just to show it to the camera where we've gotten so far. And I will start putting a bit more white to the mix, still from the original mix. And now this time I'll just add water, keep it simple. You can see I'm just using my brush to prepare the mixture, the right color which I want, which is, I will even go for brighter shade this time. All right, now I can mix it up. That's what I wanted to get. More water, more white. Still bluish, but getting much brighter. And I'll do some more highlights now. Now the trick that you can do if you want to avoid leaking the brush, which I'm guilty of more often than not, is to, when you get the paint loaded, just put it on a flat surface, twist it around a little bit, form a decent tip, and you're good to go. One evening with Jagermeister. Well, I'm drinking yerba mate tea tonight, since it's been a very long day for me. And that one, the previous one, which I painted, this one took about 4 hours. But this wasn't on the stream, I was just focused only on the miniature. And here I'm trying to monitor the chat, trying to look at 2 different screens, not feeling that kind of confidence yet, because it's the first time around for me on the word stream. So being a bit more conscious and slower here. Normally I think I would be a bit faster than that. And now, again, the brush is pretty loaded and I'm just dabbing it gently along where I want the highlights to be. Making sure the highlight lands before the area where the hairline starts. Okay, and the second arm. As you can see here, just try to twist it so that it's better visible. It's visible clearly. You have a fine line between purple and blue. But what I would do is just run thin down mix of white and blue over that. Then wipe the brush, wipe the excess of the paint, and go a little bit around that. "4 hours." Yeah, that was a fast paint job. I just was experimenting a little bit, but that's actually painted a couple of those Mature Nephilims before. Even I have the old metal one painted. It's weird looking, no pun intended, but it's a bit odd just looking at reactions in the chat coming up a bit later to what I say, but this is the first stream I'm doing, and I'm sure we'll work out the kinks in the next one next week, just to keep it smoother. We'll see, we'll get there. So also, it's difficult to say precisely how much it took me to paint, how much time it took me to paint a miniature, because I typically paint late into the evening when my kids are asleep and when I'm not too tired to get some painting done. So I kind of lose track of time more often than not. And that's again, working on the abdominal section, just very gently putting the mix of white and blue. You forgive me because it's Tuesday. Oh, come on, man. It's better than coffee. Yerba mate is an acquired taste. Because the first time you try it, it tastes absolutely awful. But you gradually learn to appreciate it. And it's so much more effective than coffee. Doesn't dehydrate you. Keeps you hydrated, keeps you awake. Allegedly healthy than coffee. I mean, I still like my coffee every other day, but yerba is what I have for the most part. All right, I'm beginning to see the final outline of what I will be going for. So the next highlight will be just pure white, just touching up on the most protruding elements. Already looks like one really, really mean Nephilim. So you're forgiving me because it's Tuesday. Wow, if it was Monday or Friday, it would be unforgivable, I guess. So again, moving to the tail section. No, not really. The paint doesn't have to dry between the layers if I can blend it in. Because here, I'm not too concerned if the paint is not fully dry. I can still gently, when I apply the highlight, combine it with the previous layer. So for example, let's look at the knee here. While I'm running the highlight over it, just carefully picking it up. I'm not too worried if it's not fully dry. Again, redefining the muscles. And I will put a bit more brighter shade on the wings. Give it a bit more of a highlight in those targeted areas. So not all over the surface, but just those spots which I want to be brighter. And by no means, I'm stressing the fact that what I'm doing is not the right way, not the best way. It's just one of the ways you can tackle a miniature. I mean, there is merit in approaching it completely from different angle, from black base coat and then going up with highlights rather than toning it down and going back and forth, which is what I'm doing, which might be still quite time consuming. Right. Now, after the final highlight, I will go over the miniature with some more bluing, just to blend it all in, just to bring the color in. Just to make sure that those highlights that, I mean, I like contrast in the miniature, and I will make sure that the one that I'm working on currently also has this element of contrast. But as you can see, we're getting there. Still quite a way to go. So I think at this point I will just use a very bright white, not pure white. Again, this is a color which you can mix up. Just add a touch of darker shade to white if you don't have the specific shade. It's not really necessary. I'm going to use a really thin brush now. So I'm going to use Winsor & Newton Series 7. And I will put a small dot of lime medium next to the color which I will be using. Dip my brush in it, dip it in the medium, and in between the two, just start building up the mixture which I want to use. Making sure I do not use and absorb much of the previous color. And now it's more, looks so simple. Well, takes practice. So I will target the face now, and I will try to keep it even right next to the camera so that you see how I apply it. As you can see, it's a very thin brush. It's Winsor & Newton. It's arguably one of the best brushes you can get. Such good quality. I actually won this one in a painting competition in Croatia 3 years ago in Zagreb. That was fun. Being in Zagreb during the World Cup final. I'm not that big into football, but just experiencing the atmosphere in the city, how proud the people were and how supportive of the team when they played at the World Cup final. That was amazing. And they did well. They had some bad luck. I mean, France was better, but not taking anything away from Croatia. They played really, really well there. So now, the reason why I'm not using white here is that white adds a ton of contrast. I don't want that much contrast. I wanted more control, so I'm very gently working around the edges, around the most protruding elements, such as the cheekbones and this part of the face, where I will just very lightly underline the features, and it just makes the miniature look absolutely evil. You can see I put a bit paint into the shade, into the teeth, but that's not a problem. I will get it fixed when I will be working on the teeth. So the face is almost ready. The lips that are here below the teeth line, I will bring them up with a bit of pink. So there's still, I will tackle them separately. Just making sure the face looks really, really mean. Face. And having a medium next to your paint, it just gives you a lot of control. You can go back and forth with consistency. Now let's put some on the shoulder, very thin line in the middle of the previous highlight. You don't want to press you want to just run your brush very lightly, because if you press it too hard on the miniature, it will just leave a clearly visible line, which is not necessarily what you want. So even right after I do it, I will go back to add a touch of blue to that. Okay. And now we'll add some final touches to the highlight, to the highlights to the chest. Again, making sure that the consistency is really thin. Because if you do it with thick paint, it will just, you will even see the brush strokes. So, I mean, sometimes it can be good, but I'd rather see highlights than brush strokes. And again, I'm focusing on the edges here. and the second part of the chest. Again, having the previous mixture of paints handy gives you some opportunity to fix. If the highlights become too clearly visible, you can just go back to the old layer, to the previous mixture, get it on your brush, blend it in. Yeah, I'm going for this kind of look here, where you can clearly see the defined edge. Again, this is not the smoothest type of highlights, which can be done. It's a bit of this cartoony look. I like it. I think it adds to the dynamism of the miniature. And once again, very, very lightly, just touching. The abdominal muscles. Now refining the look of those big arms that it has. Again, if I don't add the medium, I'll just create a white line, and that's not necessarily what I want. So if it gets too white on the arm, I'll just work over that with the initial mix and blend it in. That's what I like about this approach, that you have dark shade, dark tone that I started with, then the semi mid tone, and the third base loaded with color which is closest to the final one. I'll add some water again, making sure that the paint. This is the most time-consuming stage, where you really define how your miniature will look. And skin is such a big part of this model. I mean, I expect that I would be able to cover the rest of the model during the next stream. This time I just wanted to focus on this largest part, because after that everything is much easier and more straightforward. Hey there, Doug. How are you doing? Getting some painting done today? Saw you stream with Titania. I think you painting the alternative model of Titania. Like the look of it. And I think you went for this autumn themed palette on your Malisaurus. Looks cool. Looks cool. It's not the palette I chose for mine. So I've been waiting for someone to make it look themed with the fake fluff. Hey, thanks. Glad you like it. It's been a bit of back and forth between the highlights. And again, you see, I still have the inks wet on the palette. So if I see that the highlights become too noticeable, I can glaze over them. And again, some more work on the knuckles. Knuckles are pretty important part of model, especially if it has such big hands. You just want to leave that small dot. Even if you look at your own hand, and if you look at the knuckles are the first thing you notice. So this is the, I would say, a natural approach to painting this element. I mean, I like the alternative titanium model. It's cool. It's slightly different aesthetics because I think it's the details are a bit different on that. It's more that the one that was released in the original box looks just a bit more evil. This one looks like it's lurking. Bob Ross. Yeah, I made a reference to him. Happy little accidents. Everything is under control, right? There are no mistakes, just happy little accidents. Did you know that Bob Ross originally started in the military? Bob Ross haircut on me. Wow, wouldn't that be something? That would be crazy. Maybe for Halloween stream, I will figure out a wig to be Bob Ross. That would be fun. Trick. The question to you is, do I get more points for my next tournament in Warsaw if I show up in Bob Ross wig? If you say yes, I may consider it. Now there is a bit of contrast here, but once again I will go over with one more glaze. See, you were stationed in Alaska. Nice. What were you painting then? Was it painting miniatures or painting on the canvas? It's interesting. That's not what you would expect to learn during your stint with the military. Oh, you will score me points with Waldo, That's fine. Fine by me. Although I'm not sure if it's good to be appreciated by Waldo. You don't know what to expect then. The Waldo figure, to me, it epitomizes just the utter chaos. Not necessarily destruction, but chaos. Oh, I will. I will get the points. Wow. Now, that is a challenge that I will need to figure out a way to work around. Well, Trick, Waldo's Wheel of Woe is one of the random things. So, too unpredictable to plan on scoring on that. Unless Kimberly has some better advice to give here. She knows the reality better. So as you can see, now I'm just moving around the miniature, looking at it a bit from the distance, and just seeing where I want the highlights to be, which part of muscles I haven't covered yet. So this nice circular shape of the tail really lends itself to highlighting. Just run, brush. Oh, and the fun thing is you don't really need a very small brush for details. You need a brush that has good quality of bristle because it holds the paint well. You don't want it to dry. That's why I keep it in and out of water. It helps keep the paint really thin. See, I had the alternative titanium model a while ago. I didn't even assemble it, but I did. Well, I didn't really have a close look at her, so I cannot really say if I agree or disagree with you at this point. But since you have her in front of you, I will trust you. I will trust that the detail level is different. Although the classic Titania model is just amazing, amazing. When I saw it for the first time, well, I remember that when it was launched at Gen Con, I think that's where those masters launched for the second edition. It like sold out within a day, first day. People liked it so much. I don't blame them. This is one of the prettiest boxes. Just the quality of the level of detail on the court of her court of the Autumn Nights. It's just amazing. Although I miss the fact that the knights do not have proper names in the third edition, they each had more. Well, you could identify with them more. All right, so I think that we've gotten quite far with the game so far during this stream. And I'm quite happy with where we are. Now, just to blend it all in, I will run a glaze. Now, a glaze is something different than a wash. The difference is significant because you want the paint which you use for glaze very, very, very thin. It's like, literally, it's like dirty water. So you can apply even a few glazes. Hit a Christmas light bulb, be on it. Then it seems perfect. Trick, you are a mean person. Bringing back good guys, childhood trauma in such a way. Not sure if Ben would appreciate it. So now I've created the glaze, and I will put it on the piece of paper just so that you see the opacity, how thin that is compared to the other paints I've used. And that's what I will be using for just bringing it all together. Because this will, if you put a few glazes, this will really nicely tie in previous highlights with the work I've done on the shades and create a more coherent look. I'm going over the tail. As you can see, it's barely noticeable when you put a glaze. That's what you want with glaze. You want to tint the model. You don't want to change the appearance, but it really, really helps with unifying the highlights, because the difference between shades which are now brownish purple will still be clearly noticeable, but the overall look will be much, much more coherent. Actually, I have the largest improvement in scope over their old version. Yeah, I mean, the old version, I think I will need to bring up the old version I have for the next stream, just so that we can put them one next to another. Actually, the ones from the second edition, there was just one, I think, version of Mature Nephilim. And, well, it looked mean, but compared to the level of details that you have on this one, wow, this is a vast improvement. Now, what I do when the glaze is applied to the model, speeding things up again. So using the hair dryer. Oh, I blew away the bases. The paint is semi-dry, so that's not an issue. I'll just take it to the side. Lynch and Haki. Oh wow, they are for sure. actually, Lynch and Hackey, weren't they the first plastics ever released? I think that the first time Word showed render, how a render is in a way translated to a final version of a miniature, it was on Mr. Graves, I believe. That's the first plastic miniature that Word has shared with the community. That feels like so long ago. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it had its arms spread to the side. Yeah, not as dynamic as these ones. So this stage of painting, where you start applying glazes, some people call it filtering. I like the name because it's a good way of naming what we are actually doing here. Just filtering, putting filters over the whole miniature. You can even do it on the completely painted miniature if the glaze has really thin consistency. So once again, putting another glaze on the model, and I'm checking to see that I have similar consistency and similar color. And again, applying it, making sure it doesn't pull on the miniature, that it's spread evenly, just going all over the model. I will need to take a proper picture of that, share it on the Discord somewhere. But that will probably have to wait a while because I will be out on business trip tomorrow until Friday. So I'll probably put some pictures on Discord and Word forums on Friday, unless I manage to take them tonight. Yeah, exactly. That's my point. That's what I said earlier, Doug, exactly about initial sculpts, the first plastic versions that appeared. Yeah, that was such a huge change. And it's it's great to see progress. I mean, those were models, the old. I'm a big fan of the old Lynch model. It was very static, but there's nothing wrong with static miniatures if they are nicely detailed and have a lot of character to them, and that's what Lynch had for sure. Okay, so this stage will be getting more details in, and again, this one has been filtered with 2 glazes of blue. I will let the second glaze dry by itself. I won't be speeding it up with. No, I don't think I will be speeding it up this time around. But as you can see, I will still, as I do the same thing I did for the first one, I will retouch some of the edges with pure white. I mean, it's not pure white, it's kind of bone white. But before I get there, I think I will tackle the eyes. And in order to prepare for tackling the eyes, I will use red ink, use a bit of red ink. Yeah, we're actually have 5 minutes left, so I won't be doing much more on this one, just to leave more for the next time. So I think we'll stop here. I won't be going much further because next time I want to start with the face. Maybe if I still have energy, I think I will stop here. But next time I will just retouch some of the fine details here, work on the face, because I like to paint face in the initial stages when I work on a model, because you want the miniature to look at you. It gives you, actually, face is the first thing you notice whenever you hold a miniature. So that's why I want to tackle it early. will be wrapping things up very soon. All right, guys, so thank you for hanging around. Yeah, it was that time flies by when you're having fun. Thanks for everyone who joined. Thanks to everyone who joined. Really great to see some comments. I look forward to my next stream, which will be next week. I believe next Tuesday already. I'm sure there will be a schedule on Word social media. So just follow the Word social media, check out the other streamers. Make sure you see them. Just pop in. People are doing really great stuff. And I would say each painter has a distinctly different style, which is amazing because you want to see diversity here. So that's great. Right, guys, so I'll be signing off for tonight. It's tonight, it's almost midnight here. So have a good rest of the night, day, wherever you are. Keep it words, have fun,